Imagine growing up in a country where the law said you were free, but the signs told you otherwise. White only, colored entrance. Imagine walking into a school that was underfunded, overcrowded, and separated, not by ability, but by race. Imagine drinking from a different water fountain, using a different restroom, sitting in the back of a bus not by choice, but by force. Imagine being called names before you even understood their meaning. Imagine peaceful marches met by police dogs, fire hoses so powerful they knock bodies to the pavement. This was America in the 1950s and 60s. But now scroll north. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 1965. The Civil Rights Act had already been signed. The Voting Rights Act had already passed. And yet, segregation was still alive. Schools divided, neighborhoods redlined, Black families confined to certain blocks. Children bused, not to create equality, but to maintain separation. And in the middle of it, my grandmother chained herself to a bus. Stop busing for segregation. Civil disobedience, arrest, risk, courage. Then came 1967. For more than 200 nights, young Black men and women marched across the 16th Street Viaduct from Milwaukee's north side into hostile territory. Rocks thrown, bottles hurled, slurs screamed into the night air. Police lining the streets, the National Guard eventually called in. Imagine being in your early 20s, knowing the danger and marching anyway. That was my aunt, Dr. Shirley R. Butler-Dergy, and many of my family members. When we talk about grief, we often talk about personal loss. But what about the grief of injustice? The grief of being told where you cannot live? The grief of watching your own parents risk arrest for your future. This was not distant history. This was 1965, 1967, 1968. This was Milwaukee, and we cannot forget. All right, here we go. Listen, we're about to get into this particular episode. Before I get started, let me introduce you to my very, very special guest. Let me just read a little bit about her bio to you. Dr. Shirley R. Berry Butler-Dergy is my guest on today, and she has enjoyed a distinguished 25-year career as a teacher, author, lecturer, and publisher. Throughout her career, she has been recognized for excellence in education and leadership. Her notable achievements include receiving the Most Outstanding Teacher of the Year award from Wisconsin Bell Ameritech, the Most Outstanding High School Teacher of the Year award from the Metropolitan Milwaukee Alliance of Black School Educators, and the Black Excellence Award for Teaching from Milwaukee Times and Channel 6. Dr. Dergy is the CEO and founder of the Nzinga Institute, which holds grades 9 through 12 and is a fellowship recipient from the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. She is also the author of numerous books, and we're going to discuss some of those here today. Those books were utilized in both public and private schools. In addition to her distinguished career in education, Dr. Dergy was a participant in Milwaukee's civil rights efforts during the 1960s, including the school desegregation protest and the historic open house marches. And the most, honor to call this powerful woman, this notable woman. I get the honor to call her Auntie. This is my wonderful, wonderful, wonderful Auntie. You all welcome, Aunt Shirley, Dr. Shirley.
Oh, thank you so much. It is an honor, a double honor in the heart, to be on my niece's program. Yes, yes, yes. Nothing but love. Mm.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you once again. I've already said it 50 times over, but I absolutely appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to come on and have this conversation with me. And I thought of you because, as we close out Black History Month, and of course, this is something that should be talked all year round, not just during
That's
the month.
true.
But I was like, I got to have my auntie on here because you were a part of that era. You've done so much. You've experienced so much, well beyond what I can imagine, and those of my
Mhm,
generation, and generations that followed that civil rights era can even
mhm.
imagine throughout the world and in Milwaukee. So I just wanted to have you on and just have this conversation so we can talk about it, especially to
Okay,
those that do
yes.
not, younger generation, they don't know about the civil rights movement as much as, they should. So, you
Mm.
know, let's, get into it a little bit if you don't mind.
Oh, certainly.
But yes, welcome, 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 welcome.
Mm.
Can we start in like go back to the your childhood era?
Okay.
And I don't need to go too far back, but I wanted to just kind of give the viewer an idea of, what the young Shirley, went through. If you can take us back to your childhood in Milwaukee, maybe, like what do you remember most about growing up during
Mhm.
that?
Okay, certainly. One of the things that I certainly remember, and I think I was probably like 5 or 6, and we lived in Milwaukee. We lived on, uh, North Avenue, 13th and North Avenue. And we had like a front porch, and then we had a back porch. And most people we walk through the back porch. So I really loved having that solitude to get away from all my brothers and sisters, just to have that moment. And I would go and sit on that porch, and it was uh I think it was the sun was going down, so I think it was like between 6:30. And as I was sitting on the porch, I had this vision, and I just looked in the sky, and I just heard, and I knew it was just a really sweet voice, sound like almost like my grandmother. And she was showing me that I was going to be singing outside, and I could feel all the air in my around my face and down in my voice, and I was leading the songs. Well, my father was a gospel singer, a very famous gospel singer. He the name of his gospel group was the Faithful Travelers. So I was
Mhm,
very familiar with music, the gospel songs, because they practiced quite often at our house. And our neighbors would all come out and sit outside, and kids would be playing, listening to them. And you could hear them through the microphone. So when I heard that, and I heard the singing, and the voice said that I was gonna be leading people and singing, and, it was gonna be very uplifting, and it was like a call and response. I would say something, and they would say something. I was just overwhelmed with that, and all of a sudden, the vision just, like, disappeared out of the
mhm.
sky. And I ran into the house to tell my mother. I said, "Maria, in the future, I'm gonna be singing. I'm gonna be leading people in songs." And she just looked at me and just smiled. She said, "Yes, you are."
Oh,
So, my first, I had heard my parents talk quite often. They were from Pine Bluff, Arkansas, both of my parents, and I heard them quite often talk about, segregation, the colored people could drink water from this fountain, or they could go only to the colored bathrooms.
mhm,
I knew of that, and
mm,
I did not understand really the emotional impact that it had on Black people until one day. I remember it was Christmas time, and your mom and I were with my dad, and we were at this Sears and Robot, which was a like a big mall at that time, very, very popular. And he was taking us there so that he was going to buy us some Christmas coats. And we were looking at it, and he was saying, "This got fur on it." I said, "Oh, daddy." I mean, he was just so cheerful. And all of a sudden, this white man came up, and he said to my father, "May I help you, sir?" And immediately, my father's whole demeanor just changed. And he put his head down, and I thought my father was sick. And I
Mhm.
looked at him and I put my little hand in his hand to hold his hand because I thought he was gonna pass out or something. That was strange to see him like that.
Mhm.
This my dad, my hero, and I was
Mhm.
holding his hand, and my father said to the man, "Nah, sir." I was like, "Wow, daddy doesn't even talk like that." And then when the white man walked away, young white man walked away, I looked at my father and immediately, but kind of like slowly, he changed back into the man that I knew. I
Mm.
will never forget that. The
Mhm.
impact that Black people had with their encounter with white people, that was just so strange to me. Now, my mother was totally different. She didn't
Mhm.
care what color you were. If you
Mhm.
were a decent person and you treated her decent, she would treat you decent.
Mhm.
And my mother also was a shop talk, so she her confidence was there. But my
Mhm.
father, it was just totally different. He changed completely when he was around white people. Oh, that bothered me so. That bothered me so. So finally one day, I believe I was in fourth or fifth grade, and that's when Father Grumpy, my second father, came to our classroom and he was talking to us about it was catechism class,
Mhm.
and he was talking to us about, the Black people, not being able to go into certain restaurants, and then they were being dragged, and that kinda added into I heard my mother talk about Black people being hung in the
Mhm.
South.
Mhm.
Black people, not just Black men, Black
Mhm.
women, and, mothers who were pregnant, they were also and, when father came into my classroom and he was telling us about that, and actually I had seen it too, Black people being hosed down, the water just knocking them down, and then they had dogs too. I was like, no water's gonna stop me from standing up for my freedom. No dog, I grabbed that dog, no way. And I remember after father gave that passionate talk about what Black people were going through in the South, he said to us, "Now, is there anyone here who's willing?" Oh my God, I stood up so I thought I flew out of my chair. I was committed. I was definitely committed and I was hooked. Yes. So those are the things that kind of steered me to or toward standing up for freedom. So that's
Mhm.
about the childhood.
Wow. So let's pause for a second and go back a little bit because I can only imagine. So of course, your mother and father, my grandmother, my grandfather.
Hmm.
Now came up because they were the parents that had to place a part in raising who you were in a time you're saying when segregation was real heavy, and they were probably coming off of some of the effects of slavery,
Mm,
from their parents, and so
certain.
I can only imagine, like, what's passed down and, like, the internal trauma that how that plays heavy on your own identity. Because when you said that grandpa bowed his head down when the white
Mm,
man spoke to him, what that just does to him or did that to him as a man in front
hmm.
of his children, and then what that would do to you all as his children, you know? So wow, 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 wow.
Yes. And you know what? There were several insti we were raised or as to be free. You know,
Mhm,
we had I had the opportunity as growing up in the 50s, um, being a happy child, looking forward to our barbecues or looking forward to Christmas and Easter, joyful relation
mhm,
childhood. I didn't really encounter racism until I know because I came to St. Boniface in fourth grade, and I do believe it was during fourth grade, and I know I was between 9 and 10. I was
mhm,
9. Um, we always had these fall festivals at St.
mhm,
Boniface. Oh, they were just great. Just loved it. And they transformed the basement into into an outdoor field with straws and straw stacks and leaves and just it was and we even had a fake jail. And it
mhm,
was just so much fun. So my sister, your mom, and I loved to go and help my mother decorate because my mother was part of the Christian mother. So we got an opportunity to come to the church. I mean, the church basement. We were putting up green and orange, crepe paper, just everything. And I remember I was standing near my mother, and the masking tape rolled off the table and rolled
Mm.
under the table. And I immediately, said, Mama, Maria, I'll get it. We call my mother Maria. Maria, I'll get it. So I'm down on my knees and I'm going under the table. And this white man was standing next to my mother, and he put his foot on my butt and he pushed me like, get on up in there. Oh Lord, what'd he do that in front of my mother?
Mm.
What did he do that in front of my mother for? My mother grabbed his leg and held it, and she said to him loud and so powerful, it was like Edith Hutton. She said, The thunder, I could hear the thunder. My mother said, Do you want to die? And
Mm.
he was so apologetic. He had tears in his eyes. And as I got the tape, and I was afraid to come up, just looking at, come from under the table. I'm just looking at that. And the man just like, he said, Miss Minnie, Miss Butler, Miss Minnie, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. My mother said, sorry ain't gonna do it. She said, this is my child. You don't take your foot and put it on my child. Boy, I tell you, and then finally, one of the other priests, I do believe, and this was just before Father Grumpy came. One of the
Mhm.
priests, Father Buddy, came over and calmed the situation down, talking to my mother, talking to the men, and finally, I will never forget that. That was my first encounter of racism. And there were
Mhm.
other little things that happened during the 50s and 60s, just being in grade school. Um,
Mhm.
I remember going to a parent teachers conference and my mother sitting down with the principal, and I was upset. I don't know, and I wanted my teacher to talk to my mother, but I noticed my teacher was pretty busy. And St.
Mhm.
Boniface was pretty small. We had less, maybe 150 students at the most, from grades for 1 to 8. Oh my God! I said, and I did not care for the principal that much because she was a meanie.
Mhm.
And Sister Marie LeClaire looked at my mother and she said, "Oh, Miss Butler, Minnie, Shirley, she will never go to college." I was sitting there like, "Oh, what's college? I didn't even know about that. Must be
Mhm.
something special." But for her to say I would never go, and then she came back and she said, "But she will be a great mother. She's gonna be a great mother."
Mhm.
That peeled me and it
Mhm.
hurt
Mhm.
because I didn't like the person, and then for
Mhm.
her to say that I would only be a mother, and it hurt me that she said I would only be a mother, which is like I adored my mother. So for to be a mother and be like my mother, that was the greatest honor ever. I remember because I was very talkative then too, especially at home. And I remember walking with my mother, and my mother, we're walking back home, and she held my hand and she said, Shirley, what's wrong? And I said to her, Maria, well, she said I would never go to college and not only be a mother, I was just tears.
Mhm.
And my mother just wrapped the whole situation up. And she looked at me and she said, Shirley, I know what you're going to be. You're going to be a teacher. I said, I am, Maria. She said, oh, yeah, you're going to be a teacher. She said, I see it. I know it. I knew that before you was born. You're going to be a great teacher.
Mhm.
And then she said, again, I was like, really, Maria? And she said, oh, don't you mind what she's saying. You just keep doing what you're doing. I know you're gonna be a teacher. She said, "You the smartest child I have ever seen. You the smartest child out of all the 7 children I have." I said to myself, "Boy, they must be pretty stupid," because I consider myself to be really smart. So I stayed back, but that made me feel a little better. That
Mhm.
made me feel a little better.
Yeah.
And how about that? So she said I wouldn't go to college, but yet I got a PhD. How about
Li
that?
How about that? Now and this was your teacher, and
No,
now was she
she's a principal.
excuse me, she was your principal,
Mhm,
and I'm assuming she was a white woman,
mhm,
right?
uh-huh.
Okay. And what grade were you when she told you that? When
Oh,
she
4th grade.
the 4th
4th
grade.
grade. The woman had already determined what I was gonna be.
Wow.
Yeah,
What?
and a mother?
Wow. That's
Yes,
something. So she just, why do you think she said that? Do you think it was because you were a black little girl or
yes,
because
yes,
mm,
and, I didn't consider myself to be you know, the smartest child at school because there were kids in my school who started, like, 1st grade, and, man, they could read off the chart, and their math was just tremendous. So I had to struggle at it. I struggled at the reading because when I was going to school, from 1st to 3rd grade, I was in a public school,
mhm,
and that really made me angry when I got older, and it made me a lot more watchful for what teachers were teaching kids and
mhm,
how they were teaching kids,
mhm,
what they were saying to them. You know,
mhm,
that's another, definitely a verbal abuse. That can
mhm.
destroy a kid,
Oh, yeah.
and so, that really bothered me that she had said to me that I was not going to be. But the thing is I struggled. I was only like I would say like a C average reader until I learned what I didn't learn. I
Mhm,
learned how to read by not by sound or sight, but phonetically sounding out the vowels and the consonants and putting them together. That's something that's so important for a child to learn how to read because once you get that skill, there isn't a word that you would not be able to put together.
mhm.
And then also to not only in St. Boniface did we learn how to read phonetically, looking at the vowels and the consonants, but we also learned the rule, the structure of the
Yeah.
word, where it came from, what did it mean, you know.
Mhm,
But in public school, we were learning by sight,
mhm,
and that's a terrible way to teach a child by sight and sound. You got to put all of them together.
mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. Mm. So, coming up during that time, obviously, the encouragement, or the push was not there for Black students in
Mm-mm,
your, grade and throughout the grade levels. I can only imagine if the principal was doing that with some of the teachers. I won't
mm.
say all the teachers, I don't know, of course, all the teachers, and of course, there were whites, that did march for civil rights, so I won't say
Oh
all
yes,
the teachers.
oh yes.
Um, some of the teachers were also pushing that, negative, impact on children, depositing those negative seeds into them that I'm sure like you will never be or you can only be kind of placing them into those boxes because of,
Mhm.
racism and all types of things. But your community shows like your parents, your internal community, they were saying, no, you will be.
Mhm,
So would you say that you had that support at home that you
mhm.
needed to
Definitely,
push through?
definitely. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
So now as you go through the grade levels, and this is like, during the civil rights era, and I know that you marched. When did you realize or did you? Because I know 4th grade, I know for me, I remember 4th grade a little bit. Of course I didn't go through as heavy of things that you had faced,
Mhm.
um, but it's vague. So I'm wondering when did you realize within society, within, your school environment as you're coming up, 5th grade, 6th grade, middle school, high school, like
Yes.
when things were off, like when like this is not right. Like when did
Yes.
that start to take a toll
Well,
on your impact?
actually, a chandelier moment was when Father Grumpy, because us kids, Father Grumpy had this, he was like Peter Piper with the kids. He has so much love
Mhm,
for children, and he was the first adult that I met that when you were sitting around him or you were just in his presence, he didn't talk down to us kids. He talked on the same level, and he respected our opinion about various things. And Father Grumpy, often we would be over at the rectory, sitting down on the floor, on chairs, maybe be in the kitchen, eating and talking. And Father Grumpy was the first person to introduce to me. of Black people who did historical things. I
Mm,
found out about George Washington Carver. I found
mhm.
out about Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass. I was like, well, why aren't these people in the history books?
And
Why,
who
why am I reading this book that smell like mothballs?
yeah, who
Okay.
was
And
Father Grope exactly? Who was,
oh,
what
Father
was
Grumpy was, of course, a Catholic priest at our
mhm,
school. And he became our advisor of the NAACP Youth Council in
mhm,
Commandos. Okay.
okay.
And I'll get into that story, how that started. But so he taught us that. And I remember in my history class,
Mhm,
we were reading, and I saw this little small capture of this Black lady who was a slave, and she was picking cotton, page 282.
mhm,
And she was picking cotton, and near her was a little baby, didn't have any clothes on, had like a rat laying across him, and even the little rat looked ragged. So I asked my so our discussion, our teacher was discussing. I remember asking her, "Well, what did the Black people do?" And of course, what did the Negroes do at that time? And so she said, "Well, they were slaves, and slaves were very happy, and they had a good life, and they were happy." I was like, "Well, the crap she's telling me is not what I heard from my mother."
mhm,
I know that my mother had always said to me that her people were never slaves. But I
mhm,
know that my father's people, who actually came from Nigeria and Ghana, I knew that had gone through slavery. Um,
mhm,
so I was like, so she said slavery, the slaves were happy. I was so disgusted. It's like somebody had put a knife through me. So I got up, took the history book, and it seemed like when I had those moments, we call those aku, the spirit. When I had that aku spirit that moment, I couldn't hear anything in the classroom. I just got up and I opened up our windows and I threw the history book out the
mhm,
window. I figured like, well, she's telling me a lie, and I'm tired, of people. I refuse for her to tell me a lie. It was like belittling me. I knew
mhm,
that Black people did much more in history other than being slaves in
right,
the United States.
mhm,
So I went to the back of the classroom, and we had these pulling drawers. I pulled the drawer open. I got my lunch, peanut butter and jelly every day, and I got my little coat, and I just went marching out the door, and I could hear the nun calling me. Her name was Sister Frances Rowe.
mhm,
Shirley, Shirley, Shirley. I was like, the heck with you? And I was walking down the steps, and my favorite song was "This Little Light of Mine." And so I started singing. As I
mhm,
went down, that just drowned her out. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine,
mhm,
I'm gonna let it shine. And I walked home, and we lived about 5 blocks away from St. Monica's.
mhm,
And I knew that the school was gonna call my mother. And we didn't have a phone, so she called Miss Lily, who was a neighbor across the street, and she would always come over and tell my mother. And she told my mother, Shirley didn't threw her books out the window. She just walked out of school. And my mother, I knew my mother would like that. The fire. And as I was walking home, I could see her down the lane standing with her hand on her hip, and she had her apron on and she had her slippers. But I could tell at the corner of her mouth, she had this like she was so proud. She wanted to smile so bad. Ah, my Shirley did it. So I walked up to her. She said, Shirley, what did you do? That little smile, kind of like, Shirley, what did you do? And I said, Maria, my teacher said that the slaves were happy, and
mhm,
they were well taken care of. They were happy. And my mother said, I said, and that's not how our history is. And my mother said, "Well, you just watch it." She said, "We're gonna march right back up there. We're gonna make sure you get your book too, because I paid for that book now." And she said, "We're gonna I'm gonna walk him back up to school." She took her little apron off, and whenever she took her apron off and put them slippers all away, you knew something was going to happen. And silently, mostly, when we
Uh-huh.
walked back, my mother said, "They're not teaching you about black people, Nick Rosewell. I'll teach your class. I'll tell them about how I lived and what I saw." And my
Mm,
mother, we walked back up to school. She walked right back in the classroom. She said, "Now you go sit down." I sat down. My mother talked to class that day
mm.
about the things that she had experienced,
Yeah.
and how slavery was terrible, and how
Mm,
some of my relatives, my mother told me, had been harmed,
mm.
had been raped. So she talked to us and she told us. Yes, I was very proud that moment. So that's another thing that kind of got me really involved in I can't even say got me involved because it was already in my soul.
Yeah.
How the youth council came about was that after church, there was really nothing for us to do. And, you had the Boy Scouts, you had the Girl Scouts and the little brownies and stuff like it was always some kind of activity, but something was missing.
Mhm.
And by that time, I was a freshman in high school.
Okay.
And there were concerns that we had about education, but who do you
Mm,
take it to?
mm,
So we decided that we were going to start our own chapter, and that's how the youth council, uh, the the NAACP Youth Council started in Milwaukee. It started with about 15 young people.
mhm,
Uh, we even had younger kids who wanted to be involved, and we then also started the Junior Youth Council. Yes,
mm,
so that's how we got started,
mm,
having the opportunity to bring our concerns and discuss our concerns about how we were being treated in education.
mhm,
And I remember then that I was voted as the chairperson of education. I was so proud.
mhm,
Um, and then the incident that happened at school. Oh my God. And we were going to Pius, Catholic high school, huge
mhm.
high school. We had at
Oh,
least, I would say about 3,000 students, but
mhm,
there were only maybe 12 black students there. And
mm.
my group was the first largest black group of students that came to Pius. And it was, well, I would say about 8 of us.
Okay.
Walking through the hall one day, I ran into the people, one of the people who were in the youth council with us from St. Barnabas, and her name was Charlene Evers, and she was, by the way, she was the cousin of Maker Evers, and Charlene saw this poster on the wall.
Mhm,
Mm. And it was during election time. You know how they have election time in high school, freshman group, sophomore group, and so on. And the sign said, uh, if you no f- if, flip for no flip for McKenzie, I will vote for you.
mhm,
And it had a picture of Aunt Jemima, no, flipping pancakes, Aunt Jemima, and she was
mm,
drawn in black charcoal, red lips, and had a bandana on her head, and she
mm,
had big bulging eyes. Well, I thought that was disgusting, so I
mm.
tore it down.
Yeah. Mm,
And I couldn't wait till, after I got out of school to go to the rectory to show Father Grumpy. Some things were so pierced your heart so that
mhm,
you didn't cry, but you felt a part of you had died. That's how
mm.
I felt. And
Yeah.
so what we did as a group, youth council members, um, we talked about it. We wrote a letter. And at that time in Milwaukee, they had this program called Contact Six. So you could get in contact with them and then you could voice your opinion. And Charlene Evers' older sister, Annie Evers,
Mhm,
um, wrote, presented, read our reaction. And it became ugly because at that time, um, Carl Zinnemann, who was
Mhm.
a very important news person, I think
Yeah.
Channel 6, children went there. So it was like, oh, how dare you talk about this holy sacred school? They're doing so much for, how could you say that? Racism doesn't, and, and so after that, I was constantly being watched at Pius. I didn't
Mm,
like how frequently I was called out of the classroom for nothing.
mm.
And I had a feeling that what it was to let me know that I was being watched. There's certain things that you just don't do here. We're gonna watch you.
Wow.
Yes. And the next big incident that happened to me, I was sophomore and in catechism class. And I always had a lot of respect. Well, we were taught anyway to have a lot of respect for adults. But I had
But
even more respect for, you had more respect for priests and nuns,
yeah,
They're
but
thy holy people, okay?
before you
And
go into that real quick, I'm sorry,
mhm,
before you go into that, just so we can paint the picture for everyone, and I apologize if
it's
you
okay.
my dogs, but so we could paint the picture, and because I'm trying to get, a picture, because a lot of this is, new information for me too. Now, elementary for you and your, siblings, elementary, middle school, was that an all-black school, or was it like a mix? And
Oh,
high school was like, so I know you said there was only 8 blacks that
w
were in high school, about 8 blacks?
yeah. Well, in the middle school, which was St. Boniface, grades 1 to 8, when I first came there, it was in the 50s, 57, I believe.
Mhm.
Um, it was more like 50-50.
Okay.
Okay. And as the years grew on, it became like by the time I graduated in 65, it was like, uh, I'd say it would be maybe 60, maybe it's 70-30,
Okay.
so that it was a mixed group of children. There were Hispanic kids there, not a whole lot.
Mhm.
Of course, black kids and white kids, um, and maybe some mixed kids,
Okay.
so that was the population there. Um,
Okay.
but in high school, it certainly was, like I said, population was huge, and the number of black kids there were very small.
Mm,
Hmm.
okay. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Now, did you make any like, any friendly associations go on with, uh, like, whites and, Hispanics, I'm sure, or was it, like, was it, just high intentions? Because during this time, I'm sure, people aren't quick to befriend one
Okay.
another.
Okay.
Um
That's a good question. Okay. Two things to that. Short comments. The kids, the white kids who went to school with me in at St. Barnabas, when we got to Pius, they ignored us.
Mm,
We used to sit, we were good friends. We used to sit with each other at lunchtime. After about 3 weeks, they stopped having anything to do with us. And that
mm,
kind of hurt because I really knew some of the people that went there. Now, on the other end, how did the white children react? Let me give you a little short story. In catechism class, I didn't refuse to stand up for the national anthem, because I had learned and I could see that America was not standing up to what it said. It was, with the land of the free and everybody was equal. I didn't see that.
mm,
I saw too much a disparity between blacks and whites, you know? So I didn't stand up. And after everyone sat down, the priest looked at me and he said, "Why didn't you stand up?" And I said to him the same thing. He said to me, "You nigger."
mm.
That's enough there. You
And this
should
is
be
the
happy. This is a priest. He said,
mm,
"You nigger, you should be happy that you got a full scholarship. We gave you a full scholarship to go to this school. You should be appreciative." Well, but by the time he said that, I had got my books and I walked out. I was going to
mm,
go home, go down to the rectory. And as I was sitting there, I could hear, as I was sitting there by the bus stop, which is about 2 blocks away, I could hear the little birds going tweet, 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 and the sound like, "This little light of mine." And I could also hear them say, "Well, now you walked out." 'cause he called you a nigger. Well, are you a nigger? I thought
Mhm.
about that. I said, "Wait a minute, because if I walk out, that's saying that I agree with him that I'm a nigger." So,
Mhm.
I walked back into the classroom
Mhm.
and I addressed him and I said, "You call me a nigger." And I said, "Do you know what a nigger is?" And I told him, "You're more of a nigger than I would ever be." And I
Mm.
walked out,
Wow.
went to my
Wow.
next class. It was just too much for a 14-year-old, 15-year-old to handle.
Right, because 14 and 15, what is that? Ninth grade, 10th
Yes,
grade? Mm,
yes, 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 yes.
mm. Wow. So how many times would you say have you experienced someone calling you a nigger in your grade school years?
Well, honestly, in my grade school year, no one ever called me that.
Mhm.
Okay. And of course, my friends and all, no, 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 that was not a casual word that you use. So, no, we didn't. But what I wanted to also add that at Pius, there were kids in my classroom who also supported me.
Mhm.
They were shocked. So I had found even when just in the normal classrooms when you're having to talk or whatever and whatever, I felt I had friends and they were black. The ones that came to school came there from St. Barnabas. We were friends, but I also have white friends too.
Okay.
So
Mhm.
I found that during that particular time, there were children who were compassionate. The children were a lot more compassionate and hurt
Mhm.
because I was being treated that way by
Mm.
adults.
Mm.
You see? No, I
Yeah.
had some very good teachers there. Very
Mm.
good teachers there, but that was just too much.
Mm. Mm.
Mhm.
Now, it's written in history about, the times that Milwaukee, and the civil rights and what took place. And then there's that moment of the times when you all marched. There's historical documentation on the 200 plus consecutive nights of marching during
Mhm.
1967,
Mhm.
1968. Of course, you took part in, and my aunts,
Every
and other family members, right? You all took part in that. What get us there? Like, how does that like take place?
Okay,
And family,
okay,
you're out there,
okay.
you're protesting against during the civil rights movement. How did y'all
Well, some people tend to think that the civil rights movement was all about open housing, but there were things prior to that. We also protested because blacks were not getting hired in jobs.
mm,
We also definitely education with the segregation in the busing, okay?
yeah,
But the other big whammy was the blacks were like, I forgot they call that redlining or whatever, but there was a certain area where black people lived, and you
yeah,
could not live outside those areas. And
yeah.
there were all kinds of it was very similar to Raising in the Sun, okay?
Mhm,
Black people, if they try to move out of the area, okay, and for us, the area really was now certainly in the city, but it was like on Locust. And if you tried to move past Locust, so black people weren't even living around on Capitol, okay?
mm,
But um, what happened was that I knew this young man who was in the service, and he was, of course, a lot older than me. And
mm,
I met him through. Now here we are. I'm like a sophomore then, and I also was working at this other church, teaching reading and math and English, I believe. And it was at
mhm.
this place called Saint Hepatha. It was another church.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so I knew the person who was in the service, and he came up to me and asked me if I would sit with his wife because his wife was pregnant. And I'm like, sure, so he was okay. He just sit with his wife. She was pregnant. Um, I remember he came to me and he said that him and his wife was trying to buy a home, and it was on like 27th and Locust. And the ad said that the place was available. When they went there, the woman
Mhm.
told them that, "Oh, no, we do not rent to, knickers."
Mm.
That's how it all started, and
Yeah.
Ron Brinton, that was his name, came to me and told me, and I said, "Well, you need to come down and meet with the youth council and talk to Father Grumpy about that." And
Mhm.
that's how all the open housing started. We
Mhm.
started protesting, meaning that we would go, and sing Christmas songs in the neighborhood, and, we continued to do that. Um, and things just evolved. The biggest thing was, in Milwaukee, there was this bridge, we called it the viaduct, and it
Mhm.
really did divide the city. On the north side was mostly blacks, and on the
Mhm.
south side, it was mostly whites. So, we decided to march across the bridge.
Mhm.
And the time we got across the bridge, let's just say just in a block, we were met with the most hateful, evil people ever.
Mhm.
And they were singing, they were at this car wash, this car dealership, big builds, big gyms, car
Mhm.
dealership, used car dealership. They were all up on their cars and they were shouting, "Nigga, go home." And then, of course, the Father Grumpy, "Nigga lover," and this and that, and of course we were trained,
Mhm.
that you stay together, and we kept singing our songs. Was I
Mhm.
afraid? I wasn't afraid.
Mhm.
I was like had this watchful eye, I was looking out for all of my friends. And I
Mhm.
remember even that particular time, bricks and stones, glass was being thrown at us.
Mm.
I saw a brick hit Father Grumpy, and the
Mm.
commandos immediately covered him, but blood was running down his face.
Mm.
Man, and the saddest thing to me was they had little children, little white boys with T-shirts on, and written on it was "Nigger, go home."
Mm.
And I'm like, "Go back to Africa." And
Mhm.
my friends and I used to say, "Go back to Africa? Hell, it was you that brought us here. So what are you talking about, go back?" You know,
Right.
it was terrible. It was terrible. And oh my God, I remember all of a sudden there was these policemen in riot gear.
Mhm.
To me, it looked like 1,000 of them,
Mhm.
and at that time, then it had gotten dusk, so you could just see, I could see the silhouette of all of them, and I could hear them marching, boom, 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 and they were walking faster, and they started throwing gas
Mhm.
at us. The strangest thing about that's why I always say that God had a purpose for me,
Mhm.
because I should have died many, many times. I've met
Mhm.
death many times,
Mhm.
but being confused and the gas burning in the eyes, I could hear all the people, and I could hear Mary Ann calling out for her little brother, "Junior, Junior," and "Where are you? Where are you?" And oh, people crying and stuff. And I just stood still because I couldn't move and I couldn't see.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden there was this bright light. Oh my God. It was the hugest bright light I ever seen. It was like TV camera lights, but I knew
Mm.
that they weren't around.
Yeah.
And a man pulled up on a motorcycle and he said, "Get on."
Mhm.
And I got on the motorcycle and he drove me away from the danger. And when we
Wow.
got back to St. Boniface, whenever we got back from St. Boniface, we always had cold sandwiches. I love bologna. So we had bologna sandwiches, or either on Fridays, we had peanut butter jelly or cheese. And I love cheese.
Mhm.
We were all sitting around, and I asked my friends, Betty Harris and Jimmy Harris. I asked my friends, I said, "Did you all see that light? Did you all see the motorcycle?" And they said, "What light? What motorcycle? We never seen." And to this day, I do not know where that
Mhm.
light came from. But
Wow.
it moved me out of dangerous way.
Mhm.
Wow. Yes, yes. So we marched. So did we give up? No. We marched several more times, and every other time that we marched to go to this, marched across that bridge, we were confronted with the most evilest people. And I remember the first time when we marched on the South Side. I wrote about that experience in my book here. This was my first civil rights book. Yes, yes, yes. And there's a picture of me when I'm 15 years old. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, um, I had said to Father Grumpy and all of us while we came back from the meeting, and I mean, came back from marching, and I said to them, Father, why are we pushing or demanding the rights to live on the South Side?
Mhm,
I said, because it's not what I thought it was. I thought it had these white picket fence, like the first little book I read when I was in first grade.
mhm,
Tom and Sally, Ted and Sally, and their
mhm,
dog Spot. You know, and they had
mhm,
the white picket fence, and they had the curtains in the windows, and it was just like it looked heavenly. I thought that's what we were trying to do, to move
mhm,
into a place that looked really, but the South Side didn't look like that to me. Some of them
mhm.
didn't have windows. Some of them didn't have grass, and they certainly didn't have white picket fence. So I was
Yeah.
like, so why are we? Yeah, I see more pretty houses on the north side. Why are we? And Father said to me so sweetly, he said, Shirley, it's not because their houses are better and the
Mhm.
neighborhood is better. The point is, no one should be able to tell you what you can do and what you cannot do.
Yeah.
I
Mm,
was like, I kept quiet. I had to think
mm,
on that one. Yes.
wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I c and like I said, and I keep, going here, but I can't imagine, I mean, or imagine just being, because 'cause I'm sure that there were, because Aunt Glenda was out there, right? Younger people than you
Yes. Yes.
protest marching, so imagine being 15 and 12 and
Hmm.
10, you
Hmm.
know, of course, adults were out there as well, but protesting, for your own human rights,
There you go.
already declared and written in the law, but,
Lord
it
God.
you still have to fight for these basic, you know, opportunities,
Yeah.
basic living conditions,
Yeah.
but it goes to show, the history of, like, where things begin, but that's why we still fighting against, racism, of course, systemic racism, institutional racism.
Mhm.
uh, I'm in South Carolina, so a lot of the Jim Crow era happened here, so but a lot of that is, from that, and then just you speaking about how the parents, who were, spewing that hate, they also passed it on down to their children because hate is
Mhm.
taught, you know,
Yeah.
um, and so that they were passing that down to their children, but those children are grown adults,
Yes.
in the day and era, and just imagine what this is why it's still being passed on and passed on and passed on. Um, but I wanna read something from your book, this
Uh-oh.
one, and uh, you tell me, let's talk about it, but I wanted to read a little bit from Dr. Shirley's books, AKA my auntie. So Imma read this, on page 61, I'm gonna read, your poem, "Standing Still."
Mm.
And it says, "In the eye of the tornado blowing, ignoring messages sent it in cow manure. You are less than my excrement. You stop it, nigger, wench, or your neck will be hanged from a nearby branch."
Mm.
Refusing to bend to the old wind, lifting and restoring her wings, ancestors whispered encouraging words. Sock it to me, Black Power,
Mm.
delivering strength of the archangels, guiding the body, the soul, and the mind. We say to you, thank you, elder woman Belle Phillips, for not compromising our God given human rights. Because of you, Belle Phillips, our people may live any place they please, south side, north side, west side, and even the east side, if we please. Man,
Oh, that's a lot.
I just can't imagine. And it makes me almost get a little bit teary eyed too, because I think about what y'all went through so that we could
Mhm.
have rights that we endured.
Mhm. Mhm.
Generations that came after you all don't,
Yeah.
have a proper understanding of what your generation went through, the generation before you, because we didn't live it. So a lot of times it does have to be explained and keep on explaining and keep on telling our story and tell the story of, the Black or the African American, however you want to term it, yourself as a Black person or a minority or African American. but we don't know, so it's like we don't understand the impact and the trauma that you must carry. And I
Yeah.
know, your favorite song. I know you're very, you bounce
That's
back. You
fine.
said that song, "This Little Light of Mine,"
Let
but
it shine.
I'm a shine. But what did you carry? Like, what type of did you ever, like, just wrestle with yourself, wrestle with your identity, wrestle with your self esteem? Like, I know of course, the context of the podcast is from grief to purpose, and this is just it's the gist of this you sharing your story here. But I'm also wondering, like, how did that play and impact all of that on you and your siblings? Like, how did that impact you? Um,
Well,
and so
I'm gonna give you a happy story, and then I
mm,
can give you a sad one. The
okay.
happy story was my sister, the one that you mentioned, your aunt, she was in the junior youth council, and I think Linda just barely had turned 12.
Mhm,
They were arrested, and it was like 4 of them. They were very, very little.
mm,
And they got arrested because there was a curfew. Now, not during Martin Luther King. I do think this was during Martin Luther King's time. There was a curfew, yes. And so we could not be outside. And
mhm,
so we were at our Freedom House. We had a Freedom House. And we decided that, okay, we can't necessarily go outside, but what we were going to do is stay on our property. And we start marching around our house, our office. And so then, of course, the police arrested them. And it's a shame because they arrested little babies.
yeah,
And when, Father Grumpy, and the commandos came to rescue them, I was so excuse me, I was so eager. I wanted to hear from my sister. "So what happened? What did they do you?" And so she was telling us, "Oh, we just kept singing freedom songs, and then we had to take our clothes off, and they gave us a shower, and they threw this white powder on us, and then." And she said to us that most of the people who received them at the children's detention home, were Black women, and they
mm,
gave them hot cocoa and gave them some cookies. And then
mm,
before you know it, they were released. So Mary Ann, that's my buddy. You hear me talk about her a lot.
mhm,
Um, Mary Ann and I were very jealous. We were jealous that these little ones had got arrested, and we had
mhm,
never been arrested. So we had made a pact. We said,
okay,
okay, if Mary Ann got arrested, I was going to be arrested too, and vice versa.
now we're trying to get arrested for the cause?
Yes, we're going to be the cause heroes too, not just my little sister. So
Mhm,
the night of the 100 night, I never forget it, of marching for open house, we were downtown
mhm,
and we were marching along. And sometimes we'd be in fours, you know, sometimes 6 people across, and we were in fours. And all of a sudden, this big, huge white policeman, he looked like he was 200 something pounds. He started chanting, he started teasing us. And he kept saying, "What did you say? What did you say?" And he just all of a sudden went past me again. I'm always ignored. He went just past me and he grabbed Mary Ann, threw her on the ground. Her glasses came off and she's screaming, "I need my glasses. I'm legally blind without my glasses." And they picked her up and threw her in the wagon. Now I'm
mm,
watching all of this.
mhm,
I walked up to the policeman. He had his back to me, and I
mhm,
tapped him on the shoulder. I said, "Mr. Policeman," I said, "may I be arrested too?" That's how polite I was. And he said, "You want to be arrested?" He said, "Sure, come on, I'll help you." And he picked me up and put me in the wagon.
mm,
I talk about that in this book too.
mhm,
Um, we got to the children's detention home. Of course, we all kinda knew we can take a shower, and after that, they're gonna take the powder and all of that. Um, um, then they, put us in like a cell, but it wasn't like a cell. It was like a room with white walls, brick
mhm,
walls, and way up high, there was like a little bitty of a window, and I could talk to Mary Ann.
mhm,
So all of a sudden, around about 5 in the morning, they came and got me, and I was really scared. And they
Mm,
took me into this little side room, and they asked me, "Who are you?" Da da da. And I told them, and they said, "Well, you're 18." I had just turned 18,
mm,
and he said, "Well, then we're going to take you downtown." And he says, "Why didn't you tell them?" I said, "No one asked me how old I was." So okay. I get in the paddy wagon and they take me down. I'm really, really worried because I'm wondering, like, will Father Grupping them know where I am? So they'll be able to tell my mom, So I didn't want to be. I was in the cell, and this was
mm,
really a cell. Had the iron bars, had a little toilet, and I lost my voice. I was trying to sing freedom songs. I could not sing any freedom song.
mm,
And so then they brought me my lunch, and it was truly a bologna sandwich, bologna that fit. Now, I was like, "How they know I like bologna?" But I said, "I'm not eating this because I'm in jail and I didn't do anything wrong." And I stayed in jail until around about 4 or 5 that evening, and all of a sudden, I heard this voice, "Well, where is she? Why isn't she released?" That was Tommy Lee. I said, "Oh
mm,
my God, that's Tommy Lee. Oh, I gotta be brave. I cannot cry." Oh, I cannot cry. And so Father Grumpy and them were going through the papers and stuff. And then when I came out, I had to go to trial. And Father Grumpy told me because he was really afraid that Judge Seraphin, who was atrocious, he was terrible. He was the number one racist. He would call black people niggers
mm,
and you stupid, in court. And actually, one time when I was in sixth grade, Father Grumpy took us to his courtroom. And I just sat there and he told us, and he made sure he said to me, "Do not say anything, Shirley. This is just for you to observe." And I
mm,
heard this man call black people niggers and how he would, over the smallest little things, he would give them 10 years, you know?
mm,
So Father said to me, uh, "We're going to go to trial." He says, "Don't say anything." He says, "Shirley, look at me. Promise me you're not gonna say anything." I said, "Okay, Father."
mhm,
All of a sudden, here comes this policeman I was supposed to the policeman that I attacked on the back. He walks in and he's not 200 and something pounds, you know. He weighs a lot more than me, and he's tall. He
mhm,
walks in, I'm saying to myself, that's not even the policeman, but I couldn't say anything. And so they went through she did this and she did this, and disorderly conduct. I beat up, or beating on one of the policemen. I'm like, "No, I didn't. I asked
mhm,
to be," you know? And so, of course, they dropped the trial, dropped the case and whatnot, and I was released home. Went down to St. Boniface. I still didn't want to cry in front of Tommy. Went down to
yeah,
St. Boniface and everyone was hugging me and glad to see me and stuff, and I really didn't break down and start crying until I got home and I was in my bedroom, and I could
mhm,
hear my parents downstairs bragging. My daddy was said, "Surely she stood up, she went to jail." And my mother was saying, "That's my Shelley." And my father they used to call me Shelley. My father called me Shelley. And my father said, Minnie, that's my Shelley. That's my Shelley." And I went on to sleep. But that going to the adult jail it was a very scary experience because not they didn't give me any cocoa. And
mhm,
I remember being on my monthly, and I remember asking the what do you call it, the police guard lady,
mhm,
for if they had any sanitary napkins, and she said to me, "What? This ain't Walgreens," and she just dismissed that. So
mhm,
my clothes were soiled.
mm,
Um, and I also remember the most humiliating thing was, I had to bend over, and
mhm,
so they had to take their hand and stick it in my butt. I was like,
mhm,
"Okay." That was a scary moment, but I
yeah,
also felt that that was so minor.
yeah,
That's what I had to do to stand up for my rights. That there were people. that I knew that my mother had told me about, who had been lynched,
Mhm.
who disappeared.
Mm.
We had a cousin who, was, on my mother's side, was shock talk, and he refused to pick cotton, and he was a free man, didn't even
Mhm.
wear a T-shirt, had long braids, and my mother said he was up in the tree, and he would be watching the others, my mother said, the others picking cotton, and he would throw apples at them to tease him. And so the overseers were always trying to plan to get him because he was free, and
Mhm.
he was taunting those that were picking cotton. He was also taunting the overseer. But
Mhm.
one day they trapped him,
Mm.
and you don't know about this, Benina. One day they trapped him, and they had a horse, and they cut and gutted the horse, and they put my uncle in that horse and sewed that horse up.
Mm. Jesus.
And my mother said that they could not come and rescue him because the overseers them were watching and, oh, they were laughing about what they had did. And my mother said that they when finally they much later, I say probably like 5 in the morning or whatever, they went back down to the woods where they had him, and they cut open the horse, and my mother said her uncle just fell out and he just gave his last breath.
Mm.
Now,
No.
you know, racism, I have to say this, is a horrible thing, but it's a man-made thing.
Mhm.
It's made to and it's been around for a long time. It has different shades, different, sometimes it can be about color, but I'm gonna focus on color. That is for us to fight among each other. You see the same thing with Trump. Fighting among each other, the blacks and the whites. Fighting
Mhm.
amongst and when you're fighting among each other, that's a battle. But
Mhm.
what you're missing out on is the war. What
Mhm.
is Trump doing?
Mhm.
You see? So racism, oh my God, it's nothing that we're born with.
Mhm.
That's why I love children. It's nothing
Yeah.
that you're born with, but it's something that man has created to keep us divided. And if
Mhm.
you could turn things around, gotta have your mind free to turn things around and look at us like flowers. Flowers, there are all kind yellow flowers, red flowers, purple flowers. And every one of those flowers have a special property. One is for healing the eyes, one is probably healing the throat, one is for respiratory. But the point is, they're all flowers.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's why it's best to focus on what we have in common as opposed to what we have different. And you could do that. Then you can also get into and enjoy the differences.
Yeah.
How rich you become because you got another difference. You
Mhm.
see? Mm,
Yeah. Mm.
yep.
This is also this conversation helps many of us to understand. Um, and I don't know how you all do it because to have
Mm,
carry that for you know years of it's just generational, hate being passed on, generational hatred and the things that you've endured. Like, yeah, I didn't know about that story about, and that
mm,
would have been my great uncle, right? Great uncle,
yes. Yes.
great uncle.
Yes. Yes.
Um, uh,
Don't know.
being
Early 1900s.
1900s, right? And this is
Mhm.
just a bit of my family history. So imagine your own family history about what has gone on. That's why it's so important to get these to talk to your people.
Mm,
But the amount of trauma y'all carry, the impact on your own mental health, because we talk about mental health now, but of course that this type of language was not there. I'm sure during slavery. You know, what I'm saying nobody was. You're not having those types of conversations, you're gutting through all of this, and then here comes, different eras, civil rights, and it's still,
mhm.
things going on. You being called a nigger at school is crazy. How did that impact your mental health, would you say? To have to push through all of that, your own personal
Oh, let me tell you. I was so glad that during my junior year, I transferred, okay, to a Rufus King, which was in walking distance from my house. I was
Mhm,
glad because I actually was elated. A young child, um, you're growing and you're seeing life.
mhm,
I refuse. I had to because it was slicing me.
mhm,
I had to move away from that environment.
mhm,
I remember what really ticked me off, or I should say, was the turning point for me, where I knew
mhm,
I had to leave that environment. Because a school, I wanted to focus on school. I always loved school. I
mhm,
wanted to focus on my science and the English lessons and the history. I wanted to focus on all and the math. I wanted to focus on that. To have spelling bees and have history contests and stuff like that, trivial pursuits and stuff. That's where I was. When
mhm,
I felt at Pius, I was focusing, and they were making me focus on that I was different,
mhm,
and I was different. I was meaning different. I was insignificant. That I
mhm.
did not matter.
Right.
We had a spring concert one time in-house, and they had all of the freshmen. And we had big groups, so they had all the freshmen in the auditorium, and they had the band playing. And all of a sudden, this young white boy comes out. He's got his hair twisted up, and he's got brown paper twisted on it at the end, and they're singing the song "Old Susanna."
Mhm,
Man, a Southern Belle song. Oh, talking about my throat growing dry. I couldn't understand how the other blacks, and it was about 3 other blacks, could sit through that. But
mhm,
I got up and I walked out of auditorium,
mhm,
and I stood in the hall by the door. I was just crying. Nobody stopped. Nobody said, "What's wrong? How you feeling?" or nothing. That was the drawing point for me. Is that
mhm,
they, to me, and too often we do that. It's the same thing situation with the busing.
mhm,
What we tend to do, or I would say what they tend to do in developing stuff like that, like taking a black child and putting a black child in an all-white environment. You got that process right,
mhm,
okay? Child should be able to go to school anywhere, okay? Regardless of their color. But when you
mhm,
get the child there, the school was not sensitive, the structure, the tradition, types of things that they did there. It wasn't the structure didn't include me.
mhm.
It excluded me,
Yeah.
and it mocked me.
Mhm,
So what do you another thing that I experienced while I was at Pius in that total white environment without them having any diversity programs, sensitivity programs, or anything like that. No black teachers, no black. No, what they didn't do is that they did not prepare themselves for us, and that they still went on with their traditional white stuff.
mhm,
Okay, and much of their traditional stuff, it mocked me.
mhm,
Okay, um, the other experience that I had at that particular time was, listen to this. I went with my cousin to a talent show, school talent show, and I had never seen a school talent show before, not high school.
mhm,
I was just so excited to be able to go. And while I was there, it was at North Division, and that was a predominantly all black school.
mhm,
While I was there, walked up among the school, just walking into the hall to go into the auditorium for the program. I was uncomfortable being around all black people.
mm,
Now, ain't
mm.
that something? Being
Wow.
around your own people. Why? Because I had not been around my own people. And that's
Mm,
another thing where I felt like, oh, little girl, you got to move. You got to come out of this.
Yeah.
You gotta be in an environment, an educational environment that's exciting, that's thrilling, and then you gotta be in a place where you feel loved and wanted and
Yeah.
needed and valued.
Yeah.
And you don't should not be afraid. Why are you afraid to be around these all these black people? Why? Because in that white environment, I was taught that black people were not good.
Mm.
That's when I knew I had to get out of that. And
Yeah.
then the thing that got me is when I got the Rufus King, I was upset because all the black people wanted to be white and all the white people wanted to be black.
Mm.
And I still was on. Here I am coming, and I'm still on this inside goal to see my reflection. See, that's to
Mm.
me was my grieving.
Mhm.
My You can grieve in many ways. My grieving was I long to see my people in a positive light. The only
Mhm.
time I was seeing my people in the media, if they were mocked, they were made fun of. I went to at St. Boniface, that fall festival I was telling you, and I
Mhm.
walked into and even at that time, it was more whites. It was I would say it was about 70% white and 30% black at that time. Maybe not even that high. And I
Mhm.
remember walking into the it was like a big room, and they used that room for, in the basement, church basement, it was a big hall. So we had dinner in there, we had graduation dinners and breakfasts and stuff. But at that time, they were showing these reels, these little movies. And I just walked in and sat down, and I was the only black child, only black person sitting there. And um, the audience was cracking they were laughing. Oh my god, this one man was laughing so he was choking.
Mhm.
What were they laughing at? They were laughing at me. They had pictures of, what was the Little Rascals,
Mhm.
and of course, the little black one, Buckwheat, I think his name was. He got so scared that the black on his skin rolled off and his eyes rolled off. That
Mhm.
people thought that was so funny. I'm more like, "Whoa!
Mm.
You really think black people, their skin comes off and their eyes roll and they turn white because they're afraid of a ghost? That's funny?"
Mm.
You see, that's so what do you do when you see things like for me being that young,
Yeah.
I could only I would take it to my mother, and I would say, "Mother, this and that," and then she would say to me, oh, my mother was so strong and so wise, so
Mm.
loving, and she'd say, "Shirley, they don't know. They don't know. You know ain't nobody that skin gonna roll off and everything. They just making fun of us." But see, what I could not understand was why was it so important when they could looked at it joyfully. There was sorrow, no remorse. They looked at it joyfully to mock me, to make fun
Mm.
of me. How could you do that?
Mm.
And that's the same thing I saw in all the media. How they show black people. They showed us it like even Gone with the Wind. Oh, Massa, we sick. I said to myself, "Damn it, you're not sick. He's sick." You know. So and I will tell you, I got to a point. I got so angry that I refused to wear anything white. Get me
Mm.
wrong, but I refused to wear anything white,
Yeah.
and I also refused to talk to Father Gruppy because he was white. So
Mm.
it's myself, my other two buddies, Lee McGee again, and Beta. And we all
Mhm.
came from St. Boniface. And so we all decided as a group, if Father talked to us, we weren't going to say anything to him. We were just going to ignore him. And what was so beautiful when we were doing that, Father would look at us with the most loving look. And by the way, those people that I mentioned, they're in this book. This is
Mhm.
this is my latest civil rights book. and it's an
Yeah.
autograph of not autograph, but biographies of about 18 people who would really were to me the power, from the cooks to the young people who were arrested, myself and all. These were really the people who were the background. But there were many more. And so at the very beginning of the book, there's a dedication to about almost 50 people who have passed who were very instrumental in fighting for our rights here not here because I'm in Arizona now, but in
Mhm.
Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Whew. Now, all of that transpired. I'm not gonna keep you here a long, long time. I don't wanna take too
Nice.
I you know, I can talk to you all day,
Mhm.
um, for the sake of this episode. Um, you've gone through all that, that well, on that cover too, that was my mama on that
Oh,
cover.
yes, 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 yes. There's your
And
she's
I'm
the
gonna
only female on the book, and I can remember this to the T when this happened. Your mom, oh, what an angel. She had a voice like an angel, and she was kinda shy. She
Mhm,
wasn't as outspoken as me, and since I was a year older than her anyway, I felt like I was to protect her. And
mhm,
that particular day, we were just marching around St. Boniface, and I don't know who brought the flag up, but someone wanted me to hold it. And I said
mhm,
to my sister, "You hold the flag." And she said, I said, "Oh, no, you hold the flag. That's important. You hold the flag." And I'm somewhere behind her. But
mhm,
that was really something, and what gets me is all 3 of the people who were holding the flag. There's, Father Gruppy, and then there's
mhm.
Wayne Tolliver, he was a commando, and then my
Mhm.
sister, all of them passed.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. Imma give a shout out to Father Grumpy too, but you know what,
Mm,
when I think about that book, and you don't have to hold it up, but the flag, I wonder what were you all feeling, y'all carrying this flag that, for a country, and I'm sure there's a message
mm,
behind it, right? What's the message, where that they're not honoring, what the flag, is supposed to mean,
mm.
but y'all are carrying the flag, why?
Oh, that's a good question. We were carrying the flag. It's not because we were so proud, you might say, of the flag and what it stood for. We were holding the flag to say, "We are Americans."
Mhm,
That's the bottom line. We are Americans. We are Americans too, just like Black Matter, Black Lives Matter. Well, to me, all lives matter. But the
mhm,
point is that some people that are killing us, and it's not just physically, mentally,
yeah,
emotionally, killing
yeah,
us, destroying us.
yeah,
Okay, so that's why we had to focus on Black Lives Matter. Well,
yeah.
us holding the flag was saying we are Americans too,
Yeah.
and we have the civil right, the human right
Mm.
to have a great education for our children, job
Yeah.
opportunities, business opportunities, just like anyone else.
Mm.
Yes, that's what that was all about. And
Wow.
one other little point, um, I am so proud that I was a part of that movement. I am so proud because it shaped me into the person that I am today. It made me a better mother.
Yeah.
I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother. My son is named Shane. Shane, Shane, very right. And I have my grandchildren, and even have great-grandchildren. I'm so proud of the young people that I see that are doing positive things, whether it's in the environment, whether it's in education, whether it's in social work. I am so proud of them because they're not sitting back and becoming complacent.
Yeah.
They're
Mhm.
standing up and they're saying, "This is" oh, like Jasmine Crockett. I love that girl. I love that young lady. And then Michelle Obama. Oh my God, I could go on forever. There's so
Love that.
so many people that I admire. And now that I'm in my 70s, I'll just sit back and I'm so proud because first of all, and foremost, the things that I longed for,
Mhm.
that I grieved for,
Yeah.
was to see ourselves in writing, to see ourselves in the history book. But I didn't know there was going to go from history to math to science to language to everything. Okay.
Mhm.
We were the young people. From what Father Grumpy has said to us and how I wanted to see us in the books, we actually staged a school boycott.
Mhm.
And the boycott involved well over 50 schools in the city of Milwaukee.
Mhm.
And the whole purpose of it was that we wanted to be organized because
Mhm.
I was going to Pius and Veda was at Riverside and someone else, Lee was at North Division. Well, at a certain time, 11 o'clock,
Mhm.
we walked to the office and we handed in our books and we demanded that we be included in the history books.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
of course, we were even at that time, Martin Luther King have been in the books. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So now, when I look at books, and I'm so into books, that's what my PhD is in curriculum, and that's why I
Mhm.
love to write.
Mhm.
Uh, I see us, and I see us in a positive way. I look at the TV commercials, I see us.
Yeah.
That's joy to my heart. Okay.
Yeah.
But I also know not only seeing us, I want to, not only seeing us, I want us to make a difference.
Yeah.
Make a
Mhm.
difference. Like, like, being a retired teacher, what I was always concerned about, see, first, I wanted to include us in the books and not just we were the ones who hollered and we protest and we went to the school board just for us to have a Black history. Okay.
Mhm.
But you got we're still evolving.
Yeah.
So it's
Mhm.
not just Black history. Hey, I'm Black 365 days out of a year. Okay. So we go there. Then I also I look at the books now and I see us in the books in all the different categories, but I'm concerned about what do you have in the books?
Mhm.
What are you teaching the children?
Yeah.
And what gets me is that they're always saying, Black children are so behind in reading compared to the white kids, and this and that, and this and that. Well, again, going back to the flowers, we all have different colors, and all have different properties. So you have to also teach them differently. And I
Mhm.
believe I just read a beautiful book about cultural teaching. You got to put the children in the books.
Mhm.
And once you put them in the books, then they can soar because they can see themselves in the book.
Right. Mm. Mm.
But what we've done here in America, for Black and brown children, we have in the past and even now all around, a little negativity. Um, uh, you don't you may have, and it's very important. You may have a person here and there. And I can think of some negative people, but you may have them there. But what you want to do again is what's coming out of their mouth. What are they
Mhm.
saying? And how are they saying it? Because
Yeah.
you can be a scholar up here. I can be a scholar at math, but how am I bringing the children into the math?
Yeah.
In the
Mhm.
past, it's always been delivered to us. Might even say the British style, but it's all white.
Mhm.
It's all white. It's
Mhm.
like a test that they did on Black children many years ago, and it was supposed to be an IQ test.
Mhm.
Okay, so IQ test was given to Black children in Africa, and it
Mhm.
was about snow. Well,
Mhm.
they didn't know about snow. That's not
Mhm.
their culture.
Mhm.
Okay, so but then yet you're going to label them as being mentally retarded or have some kind of learning problem because they didn't know what snow. And I'm using that just as an example. I can
Right.
remember when I was giving a test to some of my students, and I'm always looking at the tests. And one of the questions was, the comments was, my mother um, uh, sewed this outfit, but they didn't have the word "sew" there. They had my mother will mend my clothes. How many black children use the word "mend"? But if you say "sew,"
Mhm.
okay, they got that.
Right.
So that's my point.
Whew. Well, to note, let me, say this. Thank you. I'm so glad that you made it through. And I want to put this note in here before I mention anything else because I think it's important to understand. Like during your generation, during that the movement, the civil rights movement that you grew up in, and then even earlier before that, 1954, 1968 is noted. Historians estimated dozens to possibly over 100 documented racially motivated killings of
Mm,
activists and Black citizens tied directly to civil rights activism. And the FBI reopened over 100 cold cases of racially motivated murders during that era. So not everybody made it through, of course. And I'm
mm,
so I'm. It's of course it's unfortunate. It's tragic. It was an unnecessary time of the things that transpired with all that you all had endured, your generation and before your generation. But I'm so thankful, Auntie, that you made it through. And I'm thankful, and I wanna say that I admire you. I know, you
mm,
mentioned Michelle Obama, and, Jasmine,
mm.
Cro I love them down, but, you are up there for me with them. I admire you. I thank you for,
Yeah.
um, doing all that you endure. Because I can't even imagine how, you went through all that, and of course, your
Mm,
brothers and sisters, but how you all went through all that, and then just look at where you are today. Look at what you've become, multiple
mhm, mhm,
success teaching career. You opened up your own school. You had a family, kids. It's like all this stuff that
mhm.
you did and still accomplished even, in the midst of coming from all of that. So I'm thankful to call you my auntie.
Oh,
Uh, Dr.
what a
Shirley R.
what a
Butler-Derge.
piece. Your mama would be so proud of you. I just know she would. Yes,
Thank
yes, yes. She's just smiling down on you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. But before we go, I want you to leave some words. I always ask my guests to leave words of encouragement. You can talk about whatever you want. If you want to encourage what's going on in today's time, because you have so much experience coming from, the generation that you came from and all that you've endured and had to endure, to whomever. But I just want you to uh, give some encouragement to those that may need it right
Okay.
now.
Oh my goodness. The one word I want to say, and this is the one word that your mother shared with me, and I was in the bed with her, and I had to sign her death certificate, and she passed from breast cancer. And she looked at me and she said, "Shirley," she said, "you know what the key is?" And I said, "What?" She said, "Love."
Mm,
I thought about that, and I thought about that. And the word I have to say to the children or to the world, but especially to the children, love yourself. Love everything about you that God has created for you. Your eyes, your lips, your kinky hair, your big lip, your wide nose, your everything. Love yourself. And in loving yourself, you're going to also search to see who self is. Okay. And when you do, you'll realize that you're up on the pedestal. You're
mm,
the highest that they could be. And then when I went to Spain, I lived in Spain for about 6 years. That was the most beautiful experience because I had no weight on my shoulder. I
mm,
was just me. And people saw me. They were I remember one evening, John, my husband, John Durden,
mm,
we were walking, doing our little evening walk, and was like down by the river. Here comes about five little Spanish young guys. They were young,
Mhm.
they were like 18, 19. And they saw me, they fell to their knees and they were saying, Rena, Rena. Now, actually, Rena is my middle name. And
Mm.
I had no idea what that meant until I started searching that. And all around the world, that means queen, Rena, reign, queen. And they just start shouting, queen, queen, and down on their knees. And I was just like, I was so humbled, humbly surprised. And I told them,
Mm.
"Oh, please don't get on your knees." And they just kept saying to me, "You're the queen. You're the queen." And they were not mocking me; they were acknowledging my spirit. What I found in going traveling outside of the United States, and I beg every young person, other than just loving yourself, leave the United States, travel outside of the United States, because
Mhm.
many of the things that we've heard about our great country are not necessarily true. You got to
Right.
remember that the United States is a baby country compared to China and Japan. These countries have been around thousands and thousands of years. So you got to give them credit for what they've done. But I think here in the United States, for Black and brown people, our history has been narrowed down. So,
Mhm.
and you don't, there are people who are outside the country know more about you than you do. And what
Mhm.
got me one day too was that we were outside by this church. And it was this big, huge cathedral that
Mhm.
was built in 1602. And there were people all outside. So John and I was like, why are these people outside? Let's follow them. So we followed them inside the church. And I kind of left John out because I'm shorter and I was squeezing through. And when I got in there, there were priests who I could smell the incense and the myrrh. And I knew it was some kind of procession that was going on. Lord have mercy, I fell to my knees because they
Mm.
had a statue of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and she
Mhm.
was blacker than me.
Mm.
She was trimmed with gold and flowers. And
Mhm.
I started crying because of all women in the world who have been abused more than ever are the Black and brown people, Black and
Mm.
brown women. So I'm just saying that they knew, and this is how many of them greeted me with so much respect. You know, you gotta know who you are. And
Yeah.
when you do, that would give you so much joy. Find out from your mother and your father, who your aunts were and whatnot. It's important. It's important. You know why? Because when just like Langston Hughes said, I'm pretty sure he was one that did about the table. And when I sit at the table,
Mhm.
I can sit there comfortably. I can represent myself.
Yeah.
I ain't got no glue on my head. Okay? I can think.
Mhm.
I can think. And I can present what I'm feeling, my experience, my
Mm.
cultural experience is
Yeah.
very important because that makes us as a human race a complete race.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah. So my biggest message is to love yourself. Don't listen to the negativity. Like when
Mhm.
the teacher told me that I was only going to go up to, I would only be a parent. I would only
Mhm.
be a mother. I would never go to college. You can't listen to the negativity. You've got to be able to take that, throw it off, shuck it
Yeah.
off. I like this. Obama
Mhm.
did this one time. You got to shuck it off.
Mhm.
And negativity can come not only from the outside. Negativity can come from the inside too. You know?
Mm.
Yeah.
So true. Yeah, so true. And speaking of, the inside, I'm not gonna go too deep into it, but
Yeah.
colorism is
Always a good
real.
no.
We should be fighting amongst ourselves as,
Mhm.
minorities, Black Americans, African American, so and I say Blacks and African Americans 'cause I still don't like that term Black. I'm half and half, I'm just like,
I
whatever,
I got
for me,
you. Mhm.
but I hope I did just with this interview with
Oh,
you.
certainly.
Um,
Certainly.
I hope
I
I
enjoyed
did.
it.
Look, I hope I did you
Anyway.
proud. I hope I did you Um, so you all, this is one of her books. Can you hold your other book up, Auntie? Look,
Yeah.
I got my books in it.
Here's the other book on the civil rights movement,
Yes,
in Milwaukee, Wisconsin during the 60s.
yes. Now this one is a beautiful book of poetry, right?
It is. It's
And
poetry, and I call it poetic reflections because what I did is I um, researched and got a lot of father's quotes, and
yeah,
actually, I'm talking back to him. I'm talking with him in that
yeah.
book.
And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
I love a good poetry. And then that book is
Autobiographies of about 18 civil rights people in the Milwaukee Youth Council and
yes,
commandos.
okay. And so you her books will be listed in the
Available on Amazon.
they're available on Amazon. The links will be in the description, so you all click those links and go and support Dr. Shirley, and get her books. Excuse me. And then you all can also follow her on Facebook if you would like to,
Yeah, I'm on
uh,
Instagram too.
Instagram as well, and the descriptions for her social media will be in the
Okay.
description. So yes, thank you so much. Look, I'm trying. I'm like auntie, bye auntie. I love you. Mwah.
Tishana. Mwah. Love you.